Welcome back to This Week in Video Games, and I'm here with Alasdair Beckett, king of Nelly Cootalot fame, and thank you very much for joining me. And first of all, congratulations on the launch for Nintendo Switch.
Thank you very much, Tom. Hello, by the way.
Hello.
The Switch, the launch has just happened. I was literally just tweeting about it as you were trying to ring me, and I was saying, I was trying to compose like a laid back tweet, like I don't even care if you buy it, but I care so much. It took me 8 minutes to write the hey, please buy my game tweet. So I think I've clearly indicated that I'm pretty much a marketing genius. So
it must be a very exciting day.
Oh, it's really nice. I was just thinking as I was tweeting, and I didn't include any of this in the tweet, but I was getting a tiny bit nostalgic because I remember having a Nintendo Entertainment System and a Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which is the only way to pronounce those names. When I was a kid, I had a NES and a SNES, and I genuinely never thought that I would make a game that you could play on a Nintendo console, and I have. This is the first foray into consoles for Nelly. She's only ever been on Macs and PCs and Linux. So it's quite nice. And the idea that new people who haven't played the game might discover it, and even better, might actually buy it, is lovely.
It feels like a really great fit for Nelly as well. Being a very friendly, a very warm, a very funny game, but also quite kind of family orientated as well.
Well, that's one of the nice things about it. I don't think it's a kids game, because it's got plenty of like highbrow references in it and jokes that only grown-ups will get. It's not got a great, it's not got lots of dirty jokes in it. It has a few, but not many. But they, I'm sure they would go over the heads of kids. But lots of people have told me that they played it with their kids, and lots of people have played it with their partners. It's a game that I think people have enjoyed playing with someone else there. Which is really quite sweet and nice, and it is, I hope, a friendly and kind game, which is maybe not what everybody thinks of when they think of video games. It's not a very violent game, for example. Although there is a lot of implied bird violence at certain points.
Well, I guess the day must be sort of full of mixed emotions, the build up to the launch, and then, like you say, you've just launched it now. So yeah, well, congratulations first of all. I'm really pleased. And
I also have to say that I can take no credit at all for doing the conversion to Switch, because the weird thing about making the game is that I worked with a programmer called Alex, and he's been just working day and night while I have been making no contribution whatsoever to the Switch conversion. And so it's just, for me, it's all just happened. And I haven't had to put any effort in, which has been, well, delightful, the way I think things should be. But it's been great. But I also wanted to be clear that I haven't been slaving over a hot Nintendo dev kit. I've just been swanning around in my ivory tower. Would you have a swan in a tower? I don't know.
If it was big enough, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, ideally. It depends on the circumference of the tower, whether there's room for a water feature.
So, could you tell us a bit more about Nelly Cootalot and the Fowl fleet?
Yes. Well, yeah. I'm sure your listeners are not aware of my game, but it's very good and nice and funny. That's the important thing I want people to take away. So I started making games about Nelly ages and ages and ages ago. Like in 2007, I made a freeware game about a pirate called Nelly Cootalot. Obviously, a point-and-click pirate adventure game owes a debt to Monkey Island. But my game started out as a birthday present or a Christmas present for my girlfriend. And I say birthday or Christmas because it took so long to make that it went past several birthdays and I think a couple of Christmases. And I made a little point-and-click game that was free called Nelly Cootalot Spoonbeaks Ahoy. And then I just got the idea into my head that I could do more with it and make another game. And so back in 2016, and the times have changed since 2016. So many things have changed. Beards have come and gone in fashion in that time. So just to give you a sense of how much time has passed. I kickstarted the Fowl fleet, and then Application Systems, who are a German company, got on board and they helped me develop it. And they brought in Alex, who actually understands how to program things instead of just drawing silly pictures and writing jokes. And And it took flipping ages. But the nice thing about them getting on board was it meant I was able to work with really good voice actors. Like we have Tom Baker off of Doctor Who, and for me, it's Narnia. Watching him in Narnia when I was a kid, playing Sebastian the Coot, who's sort of Nelly's sidekick / hint system. And a whole load of other people like Sue Sheridan, who very sadly died before we finished the game. But she was Trillian in the original series of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on Radio 4, which, if you are the right age and the right level of nerd, is pretty amazing. And then we finished the game, and then Alex had to keep working to make it run on other platforms, and I didn't have to do anything, and it was so nice.
The game originally came out in 2016 on PC, did it?
Yes. So yes, that's right. We didn't kickstart in 2016. We kickstarted earlier than that, 2014, I think, and then we released for PC, Mac, and Linux in 2016. The other thing I haven't said is that we remastered the original game in HD and released that a few months ago on Steam. I think last month on Steam. But that game is locked to desktops and will never make it onto a Switch, unfortunately.
Well, poor old Alex has to have a rest at some point.
Yeah, he's so lazy, Alex. Come on, Alex. No, he's a very, very hard-working man.
And is the Fowl Fleet a direct sequel to Spoonbeak's Ahoy, or is it a standalone game in its own?
It's a standalone game. There are characters who will recur, and so people who know the game will spot sort of themes. But the opening scene in the game recaps pretty much everything you need to know. In essence, Nelly Cootalot is a fearsome pirate, or at least she thinks she's a fearsome pirate, whose quest is to rescue adorable creatures, specifically birds. She's given this quest by William Bloodbeard, who is the ghost of a dead pirate. He passes the mantle on to her, and basically she faces off against her arch nemesis, Baron Widebeard, who is a villain with a variety of nefarious schemes that all involve kidnapping or enslaving the bird population of the South Seas. It's a very hard-hitting political game. I hope that's coming across.
And what is Baron Widebeard's obsession with birds? Where does that come from?
Baron Widebeard is a loser, and that is the essence of his character. He is an angry man who blames everyone else for his problems, and he's a vain fool who wants to be rich and keeps being rich and then losing all of his money because of his evil and nefarious schemes. And his latest scheme is in this game is to hypnotize a fleet of birds in order to track down a legendary lost treasure. And Nelly has to try and stop the feathery carnage from ensuing before he gets there.
So there's a lot of funny characters in the game, and I was wondering if you had a kind of particular favourite in the game.
Oh, that's a good question. In terms of recording the characters, I think recording Sebastian was my favourite because I got to work with Tom Baker. But who is my favourite character of all the characters? I think writing the characters, I think writing Baron Widebeard is the most fun to write because he's so vain. In terms of voice acting fun, I think it would be Sebastian because I got to work with Tom Baker. In terms of who I think is the coolest character, I really like Gusty Nethers, the bosun. I mean, his name is just a silly pun, but I think because the thing with Nelly is she meets lots of characters and she's nice to most of them unless they're in positions of authority, in which case she's really rude and disrespectful towards them. And Gusty Nethers, I just think he's a fun character because he's completely on Nelly's side all the time, and sort of a laid back should be an authority figure because he's a bosun, but he actually is not bothered about Nelly causing all kinds of problems and getting up to her schemes.
And the game, it feels very distinctively British. I often felt like I was kind of playing through an episode of Blackadder or something like that. And
thank you very much.
And what was that an important factor for you getting across the kind of Britishness in the game?
It wasn't intentional. I just am British, but I am a fan of. I'm obviously a fan of Blackadder. I'm a fan of British radio comedy, and that sensibility, and also the actors we worked with, who were people who were very experienced British voice actors. that sensibility just bleeds through, because I do think that's what, while the game owes a huge debt to Monkey Island, I do think that the sense of humor in the game is quite distinctive, and I think when people play the game, they recognize that it's its own thing. And I think the British, if there is such a thing as a British sense of humor or a British idiom, I think that contributes to it.
I thought it was fantastic, and with the puzzles as well. It must be tough balancing the puzzle difficulty. And I was just wondering what your approach to kind of the puzzle design was in the game.
Well, I think, I'm a big fan of point-and-click adventure games. I've played absolutely loads of them, good ones and bad ones, and I think Nelly is not a very difficult game. There's a few puzzles that stump people, but on the whole, experienced adventure gamers tend to think it wasn't that difficult. And I think the reason it's not that difficult is that it's quite a fair game. So it's a cartoon game and it follows cartoon logic, but for the most part, the puzzles are logical. You don't have to, I don't know, put the hat on the pig and then disguise the pig as a frog. The bizarre inventory combinations that made up a certain contingent of point-and-click adventure games were, I think, often there just to make the games hard so you didn't finish them quickly. Because I think a lot of games were artificially padded out by adding in mazes and completely illogical leaps that you would never get until you played the game through 300 times. And so with Nelly, I think I've tried to make it fair and tried to make it so that the player doesn't have to read my mind. And that does mean that it isn't the hardest point-and-click adventure game in the world. But I think there's lots of fun and, in some cases, reasonably original takes on puzzles. It's not all just fetch quests. It's not all just combining inventories. You've got a few things to decode and a few things to make sense of and a few lateral thinking puzzles in there too.
I particularly like the puzzle where you had to combine the drinks in the bar for the Scottish character in the Toffs. I thought that one was a particularly a great puzzle and quite challenging one as well. And the game, it's been out for a little while on Steam. It's got very positive reviews on Steam. I mean, how does that feel?
It feels really nice. Although, well, no, that's a complete lie. The reality, as any honest person will say about reviews, is that you completely ignore all the good reviews and you only pay attention to the one or two people who don't like your thing. And so I think every person who writes or creates anything has a special filter in their spectacles or contact lenses or eyes. That means they can completely ignore those blue thumbs that point upwards and only see the red thumbs that point downwards. Or these are the orange thumbs that point sideways? I don't know. But it's really nice that the reviews on Steam are mostly positive. But I do read the negative ones much more attention than the positive ones.
And it must be nice in an original idea that you came up with for your girlfriend as a gift. And now that's kind of out there in the wider world and making other people happy. That must be a really nice feeling.
Yes, it's really nice to know that our in-jokes are now being shared with a community of people that's much, much larger than just the two of us. So, because characters like Baron Whitebeard, who's in the game, and El Mono, his monkey sidekick, those were characters that we used to talk about and make jokes about before they were even in a game. And now our sort of private jokes are, if not public, at least available to the public for a small fee.
And the art style in the game as well is really good. It's really vibrant, really colourful, and there's a kind of a wide variety of characters. Did you have a big team working on that?
I'm sorry that you've made me laugh. No, no. So I did it, and it was really, really hard work. The background art style is something I'm quite happy with in the Fowl fleet. It's very inspired by Warner Brothers animations, but not just Warner Brothers, but Warner Brothers and Disney. There were certain art styles that they used. Disney used it in the backgrounds of 101 Dalmatians, and Warner Brothers used it for a lot of the old Looney Tunes, where the ink work and the color work doesn't line up completely. So you've got quite detailed ink work, and then blocks of color that don't quite fit in the lines. and bits of sort of it's slightly messy, and there's a bit of sort of splashes of color here, as if someone sort of flicked a paintbrush with a toothbrush with paint and caught little bits of little dots here and there. So it's slightly messy and it's slightly off. And I spent ages trawling through animation blogs, looking at those backgrounds in detail, trying to basically steal that style for the background. So, slightly bent perspective, slightly broken colors. And I think that worked out quite nicely. I think that gives the game, I wouldn't say a unique look, but I think that helps it cohere a bit.
It's a really beautiful game. And to know that the fact that you did it all yourself, that is a fantastic achievement.
It's a very good excuse for anything that you don't like in it. When I go, oh, but I did it all myself. I was working so hard. I was so tired. It's a very good get out of jail free card. I didn't do absolutely everything. I did have help. Read the credits. It's out there. But I did do a lot of work.
Well, the game is released today on Nintendo Switch, and as we mentioned before, you literally just launched the game.
Literally with my clicking launch finger right now.
So go out there, everyone, and check out Nelly Cootalot, the Fowl Fleet, because it's available on Nintendo Switch now. I want to shift slightly from Nelly to you, and I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about your process and your approach to designing games.
Well, I don't know what I'm doing. That should be obvious, and I need to say that at the top. I'm a comedian. I was going to say by day. It never happens during the day. Well, it hardly ever happens during the day. I'm a comedian by night, I suppose. And by training, I'm a filmmaker. So I went to film school. And what I'm saying is I'm very unsuccessful in a range of different media. So you name it, I have done it to a moderate level. And what I'm trying to do is bring together different things that I'm interested in and do them as well as I can. So Nelly has lots of elements of comedy in that, and when I do stand-up comedy, I'm introducing bits of animation, live action animation. I've done a live action video game before, where the audience get involved and create a character, and then we have an adventure. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know that all of these things interest me, and so I'm going to sort of mash them together and do them all as well as I can. So that's that's my approach. It doesn't sound very considered, but in my defense, I didn't know you were going to ask that question. And this is like my dad says, "What's going on with your career?" And I have to go, "Oh, well, I'm trying my best." I don't really know.
You mentioned before the game was kickstarted, and I was wondering how was that sort of process for you, putting something out there, and watching the kind of donations come in.
It was great, actually. It was. I've kickstarted a few projects since then, because I help organise an event called Adventure X, which is a London-based event dedicated to narrative-driven games. And for the last few years, I've helped with the fundraising, which has been Kickstarter. But Nelly was my first experience of doing that, and I look back on it with a lot of warmth. I think the pitch video I did, though, there are things I would do differently now, but I think it was a very good video overall. It really explained what the game was, and it really sold people on it and the sense of humor in it. And what shocked me is that suddenly people began to be cheerleaders for my game. People who'd never seen it and had never heard of the freeware game I made, they saw the pitch and they got really excited, and they tried to get other people to support the game. And I wasn't aiming for absolutely tons of money. I wasn't making tens and thousands of pounds. I was just looking for enough money for me to work on it for a year and a half or two, which I think became 2.5 years. But hey, it's Kickstarter. What do you expect? But yeah. But the fact that you've got, if it goes well, you've got a community of people who really care about your project can be great. It can be difficult to handle, and I think a lot of people mishandle it. If you piss off your backers, and that can happen, you can lose a lot of goodwill. But I think the way to avoid that is just being honest with people, because everybody knows that games are hard to make. Games are really hard to make, and nobody makes bad games on purpose. I don't think anybody makes a bad game on purpose, and nobody makes mistakes on purpose. But all of these things, all kinds of problems will come up, and changes will happen while you're making a game. And I think the best thing to do is be as honest and open with the people who've supported your game, because I suppose they're the producers in a way, a conglomerate legion of producers, and just let them know what's happening. That we went through lots of changes, and that we delayed the game, and what we delivered was not exactly what we said we were going to in some ways. And for the most part, people understand why we made those decisions and are happy with it, and in fact supportive of it, which is really nice.
And before you made Nelly, both the Fowl Fleet and Spoonbeaks Ahoy, did you play a lot of adventure games before that?
I played almost exclusively adventure games for years. I was an avid adventure gamer, and to the exclusion of other games for a long time, because around the sort of the turn of the century, around that time, that was the time when everyone was talking about adventure games were dying. The switch was from 2D to 3D, and very few adventure games successfully made that jump. Although there's a few classics from the early 2000s, like 1999 was the longest journey, I think, but still, it belongs to that era. There's a few really great games from that era, but it was a really hard time for the kind of games I liked, and I resented the other games. I resented the action games and the hideous low poly action games where people were leaping about and shooting things, and nobody was having a story, and there were no jokes, and there were no puzzles. And what happened is, mainstream action games learned all the secrets that adventure games had about the fact that characters and stories are one of the reasons that people are playing these games. And we're playing them not just to shoot things off of other things, but to find out what happens next in the story, and to meet people, and to have experiences and explore worlds that aren't like the world we live in. And I think I sort of accidentally, I think I bought Morrowind, the Elder Scrolls game, for £1 from a charity shop, and it was to date it was the best value I've ever got on a purchase, because the amount of entertainment I got for that £1 is vastly in excess of what the pound was worth. Because I think Morrowind is a great game. The graphics are very dated now, but I think it's a great adventure game, even though it's principally an RPG, because it's got a wonderfully detailed world. It's got great writing. It's got stories, but it also has combat and crafting and alchemy systems and all kinds of stuff I'd never had any experience of, and I was terrible at it, and I probably still am terrible at it. But it was just this vast game that made me realize, oh, the thing that I like about adventure games exists in loads of other genres as well. And now I'm really keen to, play things like the Witcher series, and lots of indie games that take things like Undertale, which take a non-obvious approach to narrative. You're playing Undertale as a kind of retro RPG aesthetic, but what you're experiencing is very, very story driven, and I really love it. So now I have a much more Catholic, not in the religious sense, but a much more holistic approach to playing games than I did when I was younger.
And the kind of explosion of indie games, you kind of touched on it there, over the last few years has been fantastic. And the opportunity from kind of going from someone who plays adventure games to transitioning from someone who makes adventure games, how did that come about?
Well, it's a funny thing, because I know lots of people who've done that and gone, talking about people who I meet at Adventure X, like Dave Gilbert of Wadget Eye, who started out making, as a hobbyist, making games, and was probably the first people of the people I knew to start actually turning it into a real career, and then actually turning it into a proper career, and then this year releasing Unavowed, which it was heralded by many as the best adventure game of the year, or the best adventure game for years. And it's really nice to see writers and developers like him go on that journey ahead of the rest of us. But also lots of people make little games, like I do, where maybe it's never going to be someone's main source of income. Maybe it's always going to be a sideline. But that's where lots of interesting creative work happens, I think. And then every so often, someone will hit upon something absolutely brilliant, and it'll launch them to some new level of indie stardom. But that doesn't have to happen to be able to create good work and be able to actually make some money out of a game. It's really nice that you can that a cottage industry is possible now, thanks to distribution systems. With however many flaws they may have, it is possible to make at home with a couple of people a game that you can then sell and make a living out of, which was the case in the early days with the Spectrum, where you'd go around with a box full of tapes selling your games. And it's possible again now. And I think that's much richer than it was during the bad old days of the 2000s, where nobody would publish anything unless it was a 3D shoot 'em up. I'm being unfair to the early 2000s, but it's great. And it's very exciting. And this is why I get very frustrated with people who either think that adventure games are dead or haven't played any adventure games since the 90s, because there's loads of great adventure games. We are living in the golden age of these games. They're better now than they were then, and they've solved all of the terrible design flaws that those games had, or many of the terrible design flaws that those games had.
And could you give us a few examples of your favourite adventure games?
So the Monkey Island series is obviously the holy grail of the adventure game. It's dark and spooky, as well as funny and lovable, and vast and full of a rich, detailed world. It's like being inside a Disney movie, but better. It's adorable. I'm a huge fan of the Myst series. If we're still on old games, I love Myst and Riven. I was really impressed by Abduction, which was the recently kickstarted game, which has all of the feels. To use a colloquialism, has all of the feels of a Myst game, but with absolutely beautiful, bang up to date 3D graphics that look fantastic. That was absolutely lovely. What other ones have I really enjoyed recently? Obviously, I'm a big fan of Dave's Wedge Eye games. Oh, this is horrible because by not including people, I'm going to offend friends by not mentioning their games. So the list's either going to have to be hundreds and hundreds of games long or very short. Oh, sorry, I've just remembered. I haven't remembered. Rachel, who is the real life Nelly, just poked me in the back to mouth the correct answer, which is that one of the best adventure games I've played recently is the Return of the Obra Dinn, Lucas Pope's game. And I don't know him, so he's not a friend, so I can't offend or please him by saying that. And that was just one. It's just one of the best detective games ever made. You get to properly be a detective. It's retro and it's contemporary. It looks like an old Mac game, but it's in 3D. It's one of the most well-tuned games I've ever played, as well as being full of atmosphere and really fun.
And it was really good because I think the previous game to that he made was Papers, Please, and it kind of demonstrates what we were saying before in that it's sometimes the one-man outfit or the one-person outfit that can sort of tap into a new sort of type of creativity. It's a guy stamping immigration papers, I believe.
And he sort of, as far as I know, invented a new genre there, the sort of the admin adventure game. I think he's probably obviously a genius, which is very annoying, especially since he does all of the artwork and music. I think it's very unfair when people can draw and do music, because I can't do music at all, so I really resent that quite a lot. But my resentment is calmed somewhat by the fact that his games are very, very good.
And so as well as a game designer, an animator, and you mentioned you're a comedian as well, which really comes across in the writing in Nelly, Cootalot. I think the writing's fantastic. It's brilliant. And so you're a comedian by night. Have you got any shows coming up soon?
I do, actually. I'm off to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is a tiny little quaint arts festival, the largest in the world, in Edinburgh every year. And I am one of the, I was going to say millions, but it is literally thousands of shows going on there. So I have absolutely no right to demand an audience. But if you're there, you can come and see me do a show called The Interdimensional ABK at 10 to 7 in the Pleasance Dome. And in the Jack Dome in the Pleasance Dome is a very fun comedy show. It's a stand-up comedy show where I pretend to be from another dimension, and I do stand-up about what it's like living in this world, the B timeline, which is slightly more rubbish than the world I come from.
And what date's that going to be on?
It's on for pretty much the whole of August. So it's on from I think the 31st of July to the 26th of August. So it's apart from the 19th. So I'm there pretty much for the whole month. Anybody who's around Edinburgh. I have long red hair. I'm pretty noticeable. If you see me walking the streets, come up to me and get a flyer or something like that.
So it's really good timing with the launch of Nelly Cootalot today on Nintendo Switch. You get that out of the way and
yes.
then pack your bags off to Edinburgh.
Now I can relax and go and be humiliated on a nightly basis in front of critics. And the thing with Edinburgh is it can be absolutely lovely and it can be absolutely miserable. It's like that the comment section of Steam though. You can have a room full of people laughing, and then you can have an elderly Italian couple who don't speak English and have bought tickets by mistake with their arms folded in the front row, and all you will see is that elderly Italian couple in the front row. And you will kick yourself until you can get them to laugh. And if you can't get them to laugh, you will go home sad because comedians are pathetic people is what I'm getting at.
Well, Alasdair, thank you so much for talking to us about Nelly Cootalot today. It's been an absolute pleasure and a really interesting chat. Not only looking at the games that you've made, but talking about your experience in games and your Kickstarter experience and everything else. So thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck at Edinburgh.
Thank you very much.